Have it for years. Really? Yeah. That's how they do it with autoclave toothpick stuff.
Cool. Okay. So this probably shouldn't take too long, but essentially, it's pretty simple. I already cut everything out and got everything ready. So what you're gonna need is your carbon, Mylar if you have it, or you could use peel ply, which is just a white kind of film, which if you ask me later, I'll show you, but I don't have it right now. And then your mold. So I'm gonna be doing a 2-part mold. It's gonna be a female mold and a male mold. Gonna put the resin onto the carbon, wrap it into the wing, put the wing into the female mold, and then bag it. Pretty simple. But the ratio you want if you're doing this for resin is roughly 3 1/3 to 1 by weight. So 3.33 of resin and 1 part hardener. Probably do 66 grams of this and 20 of that.
Does that depend on the specific resin?
It does, and it also depends on what you're making. But you'll see on the bottle it says 3 to 1. That's by volume. If you do it by volume, that's fine. You could do 60 to 20, but it might heat up a little bit. Alright. Oh, another thing. This in general, there's no part of this process that isn't carcinogenic. So always, well, first of all, never wear stuff that you like. Always wear stuff you're okay getting dirty. And then always wear the proper PPE. I'm only gonna use 1 glove.
Can you put on a mask?
When you're sanding. So you can while you're doing this, not really required, but definitely when you're done with the layup and you start sanding it to get it ready to assemble, if you're not wearing a respirator, you're gonna get cancer for sure.
Don't stand in the lab, stand it outside.
Yeah, definitely stand outside. And while you're stirring your resin, you'll notice a bunch of bubbles forming. A lot of people put this into a pressure chamber and get rid of the bubbles that way. It's not really necessary for what we're doing because we're not making, like, you know, a rocket that goes to space. What's up, Mark? But yeah, if you want to minimize your bubble count and be super crazy about it, you can stir really slowly. But I found it really doesn't matter, so.
So, any difference with the brush or the any difference with a brush or a roller versus the?
Yeah. So if you're doing something, this is what I call a flat plate. That's what everyone calls a flat plate. But if you are doing like a complex geometry, like if you look in there and you'll see the under tray with the diffusers, like curves in 3 dimensions, I would recommend a brush.
Okay.
But I don't think anyone's going to be doing that here.
Okay.
I should also mention the Mylar I'm using. I have no idea if this is going to work because I found this in the corner of the Mech 3 lab. So,
What?
But yeah, just note that that might not work.
It's R&D.
Yeah. So once you have the resin mixed, you're pretty much on a time crunch, because that's gonna set in about 15 to 20 minutes. So make sure everyone's ready and everything's ready before you start the layup. From here it's pretty simple. Just kind of soak the resin into the fibers. And then one more thing is I cut 2 plies of carbon out. I did that for aesthetic reasons, but it's going to make the plane a little heavier. Not much heavier, but if you don't do that, your foam's going to show through the carbon probably, so you'll have little lots of pink between the black.
You could paint it black too, right?
You could.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll take a Sharpie.
Okay. Unless you like pink.
Is there a method to which direction order you're doing that, or just trying to get it all on there?
You kind of just want to get it all on there.
Okay.
With normal Mylar, it's transparent, so the way to check it would be to lift it up
Okay.
and look through. And then if you see any dry spots on the bottom, that's going to show up in your layup.
Mhm.
So with this new thing I'm doing with you guys all today, I'm just going to try to make it as good as possible. Hope there's no dry spots.
Mhm.
And then while you're doing it, if you're really crazy about aesthetics, like, you know, most people are, it is a fiber before you put the resin on. So the orientation of the fibers matter. And if you look, I didn't really do a great job, but if you want to spend the time to like orient it and make sure that it's straight, that would really help you out for looks wise at least. Okay, it's pretty much saturated down. Then you just put the second layer on and do the same thing. It's pretty simple. Most of composites, the hard work at least, is before. I mean, this took me like 2 days to prepare for. The layup itself isn't that bad.
What went into the preparation?
So you have to you have to obviously make the wing first, but then you have to make the G code,
Okay.
which is really easy if you guys are 3D printing it. And I recommend you all do that. And then once you make the molds, it's pretty easy after that. But the molds are really hard to make. And the other 50% of this comes after the layup, when you actually have to cut it down, because you'll notice there's going to be a lot of excess. That's called post-processing. So, yeah. Okay. Got a little resin on my fingers. Probably don't want resin on your fingers. So, a big thing that you'll hear everyone tell you is you can't really estimate the weight of whatever part you're making. Someone hand me that. Thank you. Because we just measured out 66 grams of resin, 20 grams of hardener, but you never really use the whole thing, or you end up using more. And the areal density of the carbon fiber is different, so, you know, whatever weight estimation you put for your reports is probably going to be less than accurate if you do this.
your point.
Also, it's really difficult to accurately get the carbon width right. So you'll notice I did it pretty on the dot, but like definitely give yourself an inch when you're doing it, because if you don't, then your wings aren't gonna turn out great at all. So yeah, now I'm gonna take some scissors. And a lot of this is gonna be conformed into the vacuum when we put it in. But what you wanna make sure of is that the sides aren't really overfilling too much. So if you have too much excess, cut that off. And then the back, if you wanna make sure that that's good, you can also cut a little bit off there. So I'm not gonna cut on the sweep because then it'll probably get stuck in the foam, but I am gonna cut this off just a little bit. Okay. Sorry. Another thing you guys want to look out for is make sure that the leading edge of your airfoil is touching as far forward as you can on the carbon. And this is where that second glove comes in handy. And then you're probably going to want a buddy for this. Thanks, Nick. But now you take your second glove with two gloves. You push the foam all the way to the front. And then you bag it. And then after that, you have to get the vacuum ready. So can you do the cotton with the tape so we don't have a fraud?
So are those bags reusable?
Yes, so these bags are reusable and I highly recommend you reuse them because, yeah, Dr. Dong is going to be very upset.
So what's the replacement for the mold for 3D printing?
So if you 3D print a mold, you can either do a male and female like this, but make sure that you give yourself 2 to 3 millimeters of clearance so that it can slide in and out. And it might not end up great depending on the clearance you give yourself. Or you could just do a male mold, which would mean you're not going to have this. So what you'd end up doing with that is you take peel ply, which I'll show you guys later if you do it. You wrap it around your carbon fiber, and then you just pull a vacuum on it. And it's not going to leave a great surface finish, but if you are really a stickler for aesthetics, you could sand it off and then clear coat it.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You want to do a dodgeball bag?
If you happen to get resin on your fingers or any part of your body, you should use orange goop and water. Not acetone.
What's orange goop?
Orange goop is that fast orange.
Oh,
Just go to the nail salon. Why you didn't wear the glove on that hand?
So the foam kind of acts as a breather on its own. However, because this is my horizontal tail for our group, I'm gonna put cotton over it just because. And you'll notice if you guys end up doing this, that the bag is maybe the worst part sometimes, depending on who you are.
What size bags do you have?
Size?
Yep.
There's no size.
You make this bag.
You make the size,
Okay.
yeah.
You make it nice. You take.
What comes in a big roll? You see the green stuff back there?
So the cotton acts as a breather, and essentially the air has to travel through the cotton and around your part. And if you don't have the cotton, it's just going to suck on the bag, and it's not actually going to pull any surface pressure, bless you, over the actual part. Oh my god, we have a bunny here. If you end up with a bunny ear, this is a bunny ear, don't fret. Just know that air can escape through it. So there are many places you check when we start pulling vacuum for air to escape from. But this is definitely one of the highest places to check. Along with the corners, I'm gonna assume we're fine. And then wherever you put your actual line through. So then we have the bag pulling. You can see it's pretty good. What you want to check for is the leading edge all the way at the front of your mold on both sides. This one isn't. Normally there's a thing called a resin, like catch can, and you can regulate the pressure with that, but we don't have that. So you have to turn it off. Push it. Can you turn it on and I'll hold it? And then if you want, you can have a buddy turn it on and you hold it while it pulls so it stays there. There you go. So now, it's pulling. Always check for air leaks. Normally, you'll hear it. I don't know if you guys are close enough to hear it, but I can hear one. Kind of just sounds like air hissing through a tea kettle. And then once that's all pulled, you basically just leave it overnight. Or the cure time for this is 6 hours, but I always leave it in for at least 10. And I'll probably honestly come back tomorrow around the same time to pull it out. So 24 is fine. This can overheat, but this is new, so it won't. I think. No, it won't. Yeah, and that's it. That's a layup.
Thank you. Any question?
Yeah, it'll turn off, and then it'll cool down, and then it'll turn back on. And if any of you want help for the layup, all I ask is that you guys have all of the materials ready, so that I'll just help with the actual layup. That way I'm not with you while you're cutting carbon or cotton for 3 hours, because that's really annoying.